Welcome once again to another edition of Shelf Life Book Reviews Online. This time out, I'm bringing to your attention two great nonfiction titles that are very highly recommended that you should add them to your must-buy list. The very first one is Set the Night on Fire by Robby Krieger with Jeff Lewis. And this is published by Little Brown, and it retails for $37. If the title Set the Night on Fire sounds familiar, yes, it is a lyric from one of the greatest songs of all time, Light My Fire by The Doors. And Robby Krieger happens to be a guitarist from The Doors. And this is his story. The other surviving members of The Doors, Ray Manzarek and John Denmore, have written memoirs, but this one is most interesting. The Doors were, I grew up with The Doors in Light My Fire. That was one of my favorite songs of all time. One of the greatest hits of 1967. Now, The Doors went on to create a multitude of classic hit songs. People Are Strange, Wishful Sinful, Touch Me, Tell All the People. Most of them were written by Robby Krieger. Besides being the guitarist, he wrote great songs. Now, in this book, he talks about life with Jim Morrison, the leader or lead singer of The Doors. And I guess he was the leader too. He was sort of the face behind The Doors. And in the book, Robby Krieger talks about he didn't mind that Jim Morrison was the head man there. In fact, one of his quotes, and I will read it, he said, "I considered my low profile to be a luxury. I felt like a fly on the wall watching an amazing story unfold, and if things got too hot, I could run away without being chased." He admits as well, too, that although he wrote most of the songs, he did not mind sharing his songwriting credits with Jim Morrison. He notes that in the song Light My Fire, Jim Morrison made a suggestion for one change in the song. And Robby Krieger says that he was very glad that he did because it made the song even better than it was. Now, in the book, he talks about the other two members. Ray Manzarek has since, he died in 2015, and John Densmore. The three of them didn't exactly get along more modern day. There was an uneasy alliance between the three of them, but Robby Krieger in the book, he takes the high note. He doesn't really cast stones at the other two members. Life with the Doors was great. He admits that. It was a chance of a lifetime with one of the greatest bands. Well, I won't say it's the greatest band, but it was one of the greatest bands. So, Set the Night on Fire is a fiery memoir, one that if you were a fan of The Doors, you will certainly want to read this book for its honest approach to music and to life in the 60s and growing up with Jim Morrison before Jim's untimely demise. So add this to your must-read list. The second book of note is All of the Marvels by Douglas WOLK. This is published by Penguin Press, and it retails for $37. I grew up in the 60s, and I started buying my comic books around 1963. A lot of the comics that I bought were DC comics, but toward the end of 1964, I discovered Marvel Comics, and for almost an 8-year span, I purchased every comic book that Marvel put out. And originally, they used to put out, I think, about 9 or 10 a month. They were of the superhero type. They also put out Kid Cold Outlaw and Two Gun Kid and Millie the Model and Patsy Walker, which I read those too. Should I admit that? But anyways, in this, All of the Marvels, Douglas WOLK has read every single Marvel book that was published up to 2017, 27,000 comic books and over 500,000 pages of comic books. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. Anybody who has read 27,000 plus comics definitely deserves their own book. And in the book, he talks about Marvel. He talks about its beginnings. He talks about trends within the Marvel publishing industry, about Stan Lee, of course, and Jack Kirby. And there was controversy about the two. That's been covered in other books, so that's not necessarily the gist of this book. He talks about how Marvel took chances with their superheroes like Spider-Man. Peter Parker was a nerdy teenager, and no other comic book from its competitors ever had anybody that was like a nerdy teenager, an insecure person who suddenly got superhuman spider powers. And he also talks about the X-Men. That was a different sort of book too. It looked at people who were outcasts, who were different, which is really was a social commentary about the times. You know, times were changing in the mid-60s, and Marvel really took a lot of chances. They broke the mold when it came to creating comic book characters. And he also talks about the Black Panther, which was a most interesting comic for its time. It presented the first African-American superhero, the Black Panther, and the character was met with great praise and fanfare, though Marvel did have another black character with Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, Private Gabriel Jones. When Sergeant Fury debuted, I think it was 1964 was the first issue. So Marvel, through its decades, and it's been around for what, 5 or 6 decades of Marvel, and the author here, Douglas WOLK, presents the top trends, the top characters, even Daredevil. You know, not too many people would consider a blind person to become a superhero. So if you were a fan of comic books, not necessarily Marvel, you will still enjoy this book and how Douglas WOLK looks at the comics throughout the decades. And this is definitely a marvelous work. So those are the two books that I wanted to bring to your attention. Hopefully you will consider purchasing them when you make out your reading list. So anyways, thank you as always for watching my videos. I do welcome your comments, positive and negative, and anything else you want to say to me. So until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay social distancing, and do stay in touch. Thanks again. Bye for now.